Hey guys, Lex here, back for more of the Great Ace Attorney. Last time, we left off trying to figure out where Gregson hid the disc, and I really want to try out picking Strongheart. So yeah, let's go.
Take that!
My lord, the defense demands this person's be dispersed at once. Good grief, what possible counsel?
Objection!
It would seem my nippiness friend does not understand the gravity of requesting such a search. It's an offensive simulation. Perhaps this will give him a taste of some medicine. He doesn't know the disc at the moment. The question is, what could he have hidden it? Trouble is, I've been witnessing the stand the entire time, but few have caught yeah, it's Nash. Has to be Nash. Someone with him on the stand. Has to be Nash, because he was shaking him earlier, because we were like, oh, he's never been that, whatever, so harsh. But it was a joke, but it wasn't really a joke.
Take that!
Of course, my lord. Mr. Nash Skulkin. Or, never. Me? Very well, then, bailiff. Restrain the witness and conduct a thorough search of his personal effects. Honestly, I wouldn't have guessed that if Iris didn't say anything. Please, my lord. Inspector. Scotland Yard has to object to this search.
Objection!
Unfortunately for you, Inspector, your objections carry no weight here. In this courtroom, only the prosecution and the defense have the authority to object. But, Lord Van Zakes, I have no idea what forces are in play that might influence your actions. But, personally, I have no intention of obstructing the course of this trial. Bailiff, carry out the search. Oh, now hold on a moment. I didn't do nothing. Nothing about no disc. Cut it out! Bad touch, bad touch. Ah! Here, my lord, in the witness's pocket. I found this. Good lord, that's another music box disc. I don't know nothing about it, nothing. That's the second music box disc left behind by Magnus McGilded. Is it not, Inspector Gregson? Order. Mr. Skulkin, what have you to say for yourself? Gordon Bennett. I mean just Gordon Flamin' Bennett. I swear I didn't know nothing about that disc. Honest to God. Counsel, would you please explain what exactly is going on here? The alleged deal that was struck between this witness and this detective, no? Without question, my lord. Then for pity's sake, why on earth was this man in possession of the disc that the inspector traded for information? Inspector Gregson is a shrewd, calculating man who rarely loses his composure. But at one particular point in this trial, he exhibited some unusual behavior for a brief moment. I don't recall what unusual behavior. It was, yes, during my cross-examination with Mr. Graydon. Tell me, Mr. Graydon, when you left the pawnbrokery that night, was it by chance with the second disc in your pocket? I admit nothing of the sort. While Mr. Graydon answered my questions, the inspector appeared to have grabbed Nash Skulkin by his coat and was shaking him violently. Yeah, he did, you know. I thought me noggin was gonna fall clean off, I did. I was wishing I'd been born as my brother, I was. And what exactly happened to make the detective attack you like that? I ain't got a clue. He just suddenly turned and grabbed me whistle like that and started shaking me. Why in places didn't you mention the third gun when we got down to the station? That's what he said. Yeah, looked right down my ear hole, it did. Me head's still throbbing now. The way the detective behaved then was extremely out of character. But looking back now, it must have been then that he did it. That was the opportunity Inspector Gregson created for himself in order to hide the disc.
Well, bless my wig. He heard it? You. But I'm afraid I fail to comprehend the motive here. If the detective had acquired the disc he was after, why on earth would he then proceed to hide it in another man's pocket?
Now I wish I selected Gregson originally.
This is a court of law. He could have submitted the item as evidence.
It would appear, my lord, that the inspector was not at liberty to do that.
Why ever not?
As the man himself revealed earlier, his current assignment has some special conditions. My orders were recover the medium used to convey the secrets leaked from the ministry, and do it on a QT, strictly hush-hush.
Hush. A top secret assignment, is it?
As far as we're aware, information stolen comes from confidential government communications. It would seem that if that information were to be revealed in court as evidence, it would be problematic. Play it. Does that sum up the situation, Inspector? Play it.
I'm operating under direct orders from the ministry. I'm afraid I'm not at liberty to answer that question.
So, realizing there was a chance that you may be searched here in court, you took steps to hide the disc you had acquired from the witness.
Does that mean?
You only pretended to attack Mr. Skulkin in order to get close enough to him, to slip the second disc into his pocket.
So it was all a pretense. Well now, Inspector Gregson, and you, Mr. Graydon, are you prepared to admit to the accusation made against you of this alleged deal?
Admit to it. Yours truly, please. Mr. Graydon. Clearly our eastern visitor has an uncommonly active imagination. However, there's no proof that I passed that disc to the inspector.
Objection!
But then, how to explain the reason why you knew about the peephole? I'm under no obligation to explain. What? Yes, I lied in my testimony. That I admit, so sentence me accordingly. That is all I admit. Murder, leaking government secrets, striking a deal with the detective, all of it is this young Eastern man's fancy. I have no idea what any of this is about. You. What? Well, what about you then, Inspector Gregson? Do you admit to making a deal with Mr. Graydon in order to acquire the disc? Ladies and gents of the jury, as Scotland Yard Inspector, I will declare this and nothing more. I'm acting in the best interest of the country. Whatever I've done, it's been in the name of justice. So, as members of the public of this fine country, I'd like to think that justice will be your guiding light when you're making your decisions. This is quite a quandary indeed. Rarely have I encountered such extraordinary tumultuousness in the concluding of a trial. Nevertheless, in the absence of any further evidence to be presented, I believe it is time that we put the matter of the jury for their final leadings. Well now, as a former sergeant of the Queen and country, I must say I sympathize with the old inspector.
Yes, he's a dependable man, I'm quite sure.
In service, one becomes a good judge of character. Even crossing your eyes doesn't help when it comes to looking at this case. It's all blurred to me.
Well, as a fellow professional, I'd like to put my faith in the detective, really.
Raiden is a highly skilled operator. Stop. Currently in presence of idol. Stop.
Detective has very much trust in us. More than this, I cannot say.
I don't believe it. These 6 jurors are going to believe Gregson if they declare a decision now. Is Ginny going to be found guilty? I don't manage to produce some definitive evidence right now. They were going to lose. Either some proof that Graydon killed Mr. Windbag or stole government secrets. Or some evidence to force Gregson into admitting that he struck a deal with the witness. Threaten him with buying the music box.
Well then, counsel, I think it's time I imposed on the jurors to declare their final decisions now. That is, unless you have some compelling evidence you have thus far not presented to the court.
If I let the judge call on the jurors to announce their leanings, Gina will be found guilty. There's no choice then, Bruno. You have to throw some evidence at them. This is it now. It all comes down to this. Who do I present evidence against? Gregson or Graydon? Oh wait, no! Can't possibly decide this. I think all I could do is leave it to the jury's capable hands in this. No, Bruno! Look how far we've come. This is the final stretch. We need to pick the most explosive piece of evidence and throw it at the weakest witness. Hard. Just before you do. No, I misclicked. Fuck.
You deserve an explosive punishment for that the weakest of decisions.
Ah. This will be the final blow. I need to decide where to place it better than myself.
Your answer then, please, counsel.
This is it now. It all comes down to this. I'm guessing I'd give it to Inspector Gregson. The music box. Inspector Gregson, there's one final piece of evidence I would like you to see.
There? What's that then?
If you refuse to acknowledge that you did in fact strike a deal with the witness here today, then you leave us no choice but to examine this piece of evidence thoroughly.
Well, go on.
This is my last chance. Looks like I'm going to have to force his hand here. One final piece of evidence to get this detective to admit the deal he struck clearly with Graydon. I keep saying Grayson.
Take that!
Is that Mr. McGilded's peculiar music box, counsel?
Yes, with a disc already in place, ready to play. I think perhaps now would be a good time to listen to the sound produced by the music box again. Only this time, with the second disc we've just discovered set in place as well.
Goodness, this counsel?
Hold it!
No, wait. I can't let you do that.
Why not?
Because it's got nothing to do with this case. That's why.
Objection!
Not true, Inspector. Eh? The defense has already proposed that the sounds heard by the court earlier from this music box were part of a Morse code message. We know that Morse code comprises of 2 distinct tones. The defense believes that the second disc contains the second tone needed to complete the message. And now we have a chance to confirm that theory.
For crying out loud, Sunshine, we're talking about state secrets here. If you're letting the whole courtroom hear the confidential information like that, it's treason.
Then, do you admit the charge? That in order to protect those secrets you engaged in unlawful dealings with the witness?
You're mad. If you let that secret information out into the public domain, you'll be making an enemy of the entire British government, you idiot.
Objection!
Let's not forget, Inspector, that you, Scotland Yard officer, leaked confidential case details to a witness. That you continue to lie in court, and all because, by fair means or foul, you're determined to do your duty. Well, by fair means or foul, I'm prepared to do mine. Don't you dare. I will stop at nothing to protect my client. I don't care who I make an enemy of. My lord, if you please. The court must hear the sounds made by that music box. Come on, Van Zeeks. For Pete's sake, stop him.
Objection!
Yeah. Inspector, you should know my methods by now. I'm a prosecutor. I'm no Scotland Yard puppet. Arrgh. In this courtroom, my duty is to the law, so let me propose a toast to uncovering the truth, by fair means or foul. Very well. The defense's stance here, and that of the prosecution, have been made very clear, I feel. Therefore, in accordance with the defense request, the court will now listen as this music box is set in operation once more. This time with the second disc in place and both discs playing simultaneously. Oh shit. Oh, listen to that. It's unmistakable now. It's Morse code. Alright, I admit it. Whatever you want. But for the love of God, shut that blooming box up. Let me ask you again then, Inspector Gregson. Did you or did you not strike a deal with the witness next to you in the stand, Mr. Ashley Graydon? Specifically, did you furnish the witness with confidential case details in exchange for this music box disc? Did you reveal the existence of the peephole in the pawnbroker's storeroom door, Inspector? I did. Stop! What are you doing, man? It's all exactly like the young Eastern noise said. When the trial resumed after the recess, and we were stood here in the stand together, that's when he approached me with the deal. Shut up, you imbecile. Shut up! Psst, you there. You're the detective who turned up to the pawnbroker the other day, aren't you? May I have something you're looking for, Inspector? With me at this very moment. So how about a trade? I suggest you accept. More information that may make certain individuals uncomfortable will soon become very public indeed. I couldn't let that information become public knowledge, not under any circumstances. So I accepted the man's proposal, told him details about the case that should have been put under clear. The peephole in the storeroom door, and the bloodstains on the overcoat. By giving false testimony, the witness intended to have the defendant wrongly accused of murder. Inspector, you knew that, yet you still revealed those details to facilitate the witness's perjury. I did. But then it turned out the peephole had only been made that night, after the incident took place. Scotland Yard wasn't aware of that, if I'm perfectly honest. Well, Mr. Graydon, what do you have to say for yourself? There's nothing and no one left for you to hide behind. You struck a deal with the Inspector in order to escape conviction of a very serious crime, namely this. You are the third intruder who broke into the pawnbroker on the night in question. And you perpetrated the murder of the proprietor, Mr. Pop Windibank. You. Traitor! Oh shit. Someone stop him? Bailiff? Bailiff, restrain that man. At once. That's it then. It's all over.
Oh. Hmm. Hmm. I despised my life growing up. Those slums are vile places. I was cursed from birth, born into poverty, the son of a penniless artisan. My parents did nothing but quarrel all day long. What little money they had was never spent on me. So I set about studying to better myself, to one day escape from that hellhole.
And you eventually became a communications officer. I admire your determination.
Then you decided to sell government secrets.
Why?
Isn't it obvious? Because I wanted money. Even now, years later, the nightmares of my life in the slums wake me in the small hours. I wanted to drown them out, with more money than anyone who lived in that squalor could ever imagine. Then one day I met him. Mr. Magnus McGilded.
You're a fiend with a queer talent, so you are. I've money to throw your way if you're interested. All you need to do is go along with my little plan now.
I was to steal the ministry's telegraphic message logs, and McGilded would buy them for a handsome sum. As I was responsible for inspections of the ministry's communications office, it was a simple enough task.
The lure of the devil's offerings. How easy it is to succumb. But you must surely have realized the seriousness of the crime you were committing.
And for that reason, I took great lengths to ensure that my actions were untraceable.
By using the music box.
My father was a brickmaker, though my mother divorced him when I was still a child. Yes, Mr. Mason Milverton. That's right, he was very skilled with his hands. He'd once been a music box maker's apprentice. I imagine his skills would be sufficient to create a machine that could generate Morse code. So I sought out my father again to employ his services. It was the first time I'd seen him since I'd left the slums 10 years earlier.
Look at you, Ashley. What a fine gentleman you have become, eh?
He was a different man to the one in my memory. A thin, frail old man. But poverty had never broken him, never corrupted him like it had me. I was sure that he wouldn't help me if I told him the real reason. So I made up a story.
I've got some work for you, father. I need some music box discs made. Music box discs, eh?
A musician friend of mine has written some music he wants to sell to the public. I brought the score with me. There are two, actually.
I'd be delighted, son. It's been 20 years since I did any work like this, though. Fetch my tools, would you? They're in the loft.
That's how I had him make the two discs.
Thereby splitting the information in two. You were taking considerable precautions indeed.
It was to protect myself as much as anything. It meant that I could deal with McGilded in two separate transactions. The first involved the first of the two discs in the music box for playing them. Exchanged them with McGilded for 10 guineas. Then, on receipt of the second disc, he would pay me 1,000 guineas. So what happened on an omnibus 2 months ago? Was the second part of the deal, the exchange of the second disc? Yes. I'd sold the man information the way a number of times already. But it seems he became reluctant to part with his money.
But that doesn't quite make sense, Mr. Graydon. For why was it on that omnibus 2 months ago? Your father, Mr. Milverton, was the one dealing with Mr. McGilded and not yourself.
When I received 1,000 guineas after my first completed dealings with McGilded, I decided to give 200 to my father for his troubles. But my father realized something was amiss. In time, he worked out that I must be involved in something dubious, and when he did, he asked me,
Next time there's an exchange, you will let your old man do it, understand? Otherwise I won't take your money anymore.
"Hmm." That was my father's way of dealing with it, I suppose. Climb into the omnibus, hand over the second disc, take the money from McGilded. That's it. He had no idea what was actually on the discs I'd asked him to make. He never knew. Just like I'll never know why everything went so horribly wrong that night. All I know is that the disc was taken from him, and he never returned home. It's only then I found out what sort of monster McGilded really was. So after 10 years of not once uttering it, I swore in my father's name. To exact revenge. Revenge? As anyone with even the remotest knowledge of the man would no doubt be able to imagine, McGilded brought all his wealth and influence to bear in the most despicable of ways. To crush any semblance of justice in his trial. The crime scene was tampered with, evidence was fixed, and witnesses were bribed. The trial 2 months ago was a farce from start to finish. My feet had barely touched British soil back then, and I was walked into a hornet's nest completely unaware of the sinister background to it all. I made plenty of money out of my dealings with McGilded by then, so I spared nothing to my arrangement 2 months ago. I knew exactly who to hire. If you're willing to pay the price, there are people in this city willing to do anything you ask. McGilded himself had shown me that. Are you saying that? I think you have the picture now. After he twisted everything to his favor in this courtroom to ensure that he walked free, I took matters into my own hands and delivered the justice that monster deserved. That tragic accident following the trial here 2 months ago was planned and executed by yours truly. McGilded's death that day was caused by this man. Everything's ready, sir, if you'd like to follow me into the courtroom. Watch yourself, sir. It is sooner than I'd like to believe. I hope it's not convenient, sir. There were some changes to the schedule. Well, I must be making tracks now. 'Tis time for the inspection. We're going to examine the omnibus again, so I'm told. I asked if I could be present for it myself. Okay, it wasn't Gregson. So the policeman who came to tell McGilded he could examine the omnibus again. That's right, an imposter hired by me. McGilded used his wealth to manipulate the trial. He paid people to adulterate the omnibus with all manner of false evidence. He threatened witnesses to lie in their testimony. So I gave the man a taste of his own medicine. Once the omnibus was doused in paraffin, one of my sham policemen ushered McGilded inside and set him on a one-way journey to hell. An eye for an eye. That's how I avenged my father's death.
A spine-chilling account indeed.
But that wasn't the end of it for me. That was a loose end, you see. Loose end? Yes, I should think it's obvious. The second disc, which my father had taken to exchange with McGilded.
Ah, yes. There was indeed no mention of it in the man's trial 2 months ago. Clearly because it had been removed from the scene of the crime.
When I realized it was missing, I remembered something. Something from the first time I dealt with McGilded. This is the first of the 2 discs, and the music box you need to play them in.
Well, look at that now. What an ingenious little invention. So then, as promised, 10 guineas for you, young man. What's this? Winterbank's pawnbrokery. Aye, it's a pawnbroker's ticket, so it is. You can use it to redeem an article I've deposited there for you. There's no need to give a name, just hand over the ticket and tell the fiend the watchword. Put a jewel in pawn for you. It'll fetch a good 10 guineas if you sell it, so it will. Never heard of a pawnbrokery being used in quite that way before. Have you not, Mr. Graydon? London's pawnbrokeries are useful places, you know. Each one's like an extremely secure vault. So I knew that if he'd taken steps to hide the disc, it would be in that pawnbrokery somewhere. And that on the night he killed my father, he must have entrusted the ticket to someone. Yes, to Gina. I remember now, when we first met you at Windybanks that afternoon 2 days ago. You had a description of Miss Lestrade written down. How did you know who you were looking for? From the trial, that Baka's testimony was clearly peculiar. Anyone could see that. I realized immediately that she was another of McGilded's pawns, that he must have threatened her somehow. I was fairly convinced it would be her who had the ticket, so I started to make some inquiries. I had strong suspicion the girl would come out of the woodwork on the redemption deadline. It was absolutely right. And yes, sure enough, she did. All I needed to do was wait until the girl went to Windybanks to redeem the articles. But unfortunately, he redeemed only McGilded's overcoat and the one disc that was in his pocket. The all-important music box with the second disc inside was missing, because it had already been forfeited 2 days earlier. But I was unaware of that fact. Had I not been, I would have avoided my nighttime excursion. Meanwhile, as our investigation into the stolen government secrets was progressing, we picked up on the fact that McGilded was involved. Spectre, you've recovered fast. My orders were to recover the stolen information as quickly as possible, so we started gathering the fellas' possessions and examining whatever we could lay our hands on. We had full-scale investigation going on at the yard, but we had to keep it all as quiet as we could. Then, when the inspector here took the disc from me in the pawnbrokery that day, I became nervous. I was sure the music box and the second disc was still there in the shop somewhere, so I knew it was a race against time. I had to find those articles before the police did. So that's what prompted you to break into the place that same night? With the help of your old friends, the Skulkin brothers? What happened that night in the pawnbrokery, I can only describe as a nightmare. While Nash and Ringo were searching the counter, I'd located a music box I'd sold to McGilded on the shelves of forfeited articles. And the second disc was inside. Yes, I slid it into my pocket with a very deep sigh of relief. But then, something entirely unexpected happened.
What are you doing in my shop?
Bang! A gunshot rang out in the shop, and I felt a sharp pain in my left arm. The broker fired his gun, and the bullet pierced your limb. Yes, exactly. But unfortunately, I decided to bring my own gun with me that night, just in case. Before I knew what was happening, I'd fired back. The man had already turned to flee. I hadn't intended to fire in his direction, much less kill him, but unfortunately for both of us, the bullet hit home. It struck him in the middle of his back as he fled through the storeroom door for refuge.
Sorry, Tao.
It all took place in a blink of an eye. I don't imagine Nash and Ringo even realized what happened at first.
I was terrified, so I fled. And that's the whole story. That's everything that happened at Windybanks on that wretched night. Earlier, you called McGilded a monster. Man who used his wealth and influence to distort the facts and escape justice for the crime of murder. What tragic irony. For what you have done is exactly the same. You became the very monster you saw and despised so deeply in McGilded. Yes, I think I have.
Well, this has been a long and exhausting trial, yeah. However, it would seem that at last we have arrived at the truth. Inspector Gregson, or of Mr. Ashley Graydon.
He's been restrained, my lord, and is being escorted to the yard. He'll be charged with the murder of Mr. Windybank and the stealing of government secrets.
Very good. And you, Inspector, look at a player. You will have to face charges yourself.
Yes, my lord, of course. It transpires that you were complicit in helping a criminal escape justice. The fact remains whether or not you were doing so in the line of duty. The crime is a serious one, Inspector, and inexcusable.
Now to the defendant, Miss General Stroud.
Oh, yeah?
It's time for the final adjudication. Is the jury ready, Mr. Foreman?
Yes, sir. Guard-up squadron standing by, sir. This is really it now. The last push, the final call, the finishing whistle. My men are ready to deliver their verdicts.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Very well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. You will now declare your final decisions to the court.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty. Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
We did it, guys. We didn't have to do another one.
Haha, that's the stuff. I'm off the hook. Only got perjury on my record now. Finally, Reno, you finally managed to do it.
Finally is the word. I really wasn't sure if we'd come out on top for a while there.
Susie was right. You're the best lawyer in the world.
Miss Lestrade, I am not finished with you yet.
What are you looking at me like that for?
Before you start enjoying your freedom, there are certain other crimes to consider, 2 months ago, in my courtroom no less, you gave false testimony, did you not? And in relation to the trial today, not only did you unlawfully enter Windybank's pawnbrokery, you also attempted to abscond with Mr. McGilded's property, it seems.
I never done nothing of the sort.
Of course not. It's not like you were gleefully wearing McGilded's coat in your cell yesterday or anything.
Just when I was getting excited, throwing a party for Ginny this evening.
And turning our attention to the fence, determining that, when played together, the music box just contained a message of Morse code was, well, it was certainly a most unexpected revelation, counsel.
Quite so, my lord. The prosecution was caught entirely off guard. In fact, I think we should applaud my learned friend's courage here today. I propose a toast. To demanding that government secrets be disseminated before the entire courtroom. Very sorry about that. It was the only way I could get Inspector Gregson to admit what he'd done, so
If I may say something on that point,
Isn't that?
it's about the sounds produced by the music box before.
Sweet. I was gonna decode it at the end of the video.
I do wonder if that was really Morse code at all.
What? What are you saying, madam?
Oh, well, it's just that I'm really rather fanatical when it comes to Morse code, you see. It's so much that the whole world seems to be covered in dots and dashes to me, in fact.
Goodness, madam. An unhealthy level of obsession one feels.
But I must say that in my opinion, the sounds produced by those two discs are nothing more than that. Meaningless series of two different tones.
What?
What?
Can that really be? It wasn't Morse code after all?
Hmm.
My lord, the defense would like to listen to the music box again.
Are you off your nut? How many times do I have to tell you? Those discs contain ministerial secrets, sunshine.
This courtroom is not appropriate forum to discuss the nature of government communications. We know McGilded conspired to trade national secrets with our enemies, secrets acquired from Mr. Graydon. Now that the man has admitted to his crimes, we have no need to pursue the matter further. But it's really going to bother me. Yeah, same.
Mr. Stroud,
Yeah, my lord.
that which you have seen today here in this courtroom has been extremely disturbing.
Falsified evidence, intimidation, perjury, a grim catalogue of depravity.
An appalling experience to befall any child.
Come on, it ain't nothing I don't see most days in back slums.
I beg your pardon.
If you're weak, pay for it. That's just how life goes.
Gina,
But look, I reckon I'll work something out today. The world ain't fair, but if you want it to change, you gotta start at home. You gotta change how you are yourself.
Well, that's a very laudable lesson, I would say. I eagerly look forward to a born-again Mr. Stroud never gracing my courtroom with her presence again. Now, with regard to the murder of Pop Winterbank, proprietor of pawnbrokery business on Baker Street, I hereby declare the defendant Miss Gina Lestrade.
not guilty. Confetti and fireworks.
Yay! Grenade launcher.
Unauthorized fireworks in the courtroom.
Let us all, court is adjourned.
It's time to duel.
On a personal note, I must say you've surprised me, my Far Eastern friend. Despite being a Nipponese, you saw through the pretense to the malice that festered within that Englishman. And at that same time, you saw through the grime to the surprising heart of your English client. You have a curious talent for judging character, especially considering our very different cultures. Thanks. I don't think there's anything curious about it. Whether we're from the Empire of Great Britain or the Empire of Japan, we're all human beings. We're not so very different on the inside. You know, I took this case for one very simple reason. To lock swords with you once again here in the courtroom. You did? When I encountered you for the first time 2 months ago, it reminded me of toasting friendship and trust with another Nipponese, only to find my trust betrayed. Through you, I hope to look into the eyes of the man I once knew and try to understand. You mentioned something similar earlier today. about total betrayal at the hands of the Japanese. What happened exactly? Well, you may ask, and one day, when the time comes, you will learn the answer, whether you like it or not. Alright, I'll wait for that day if I must. Coming to be known as the Reaper of the Bailey, in my retirement from the service 5 years ago, gives me cause to wonder if our meeting has some deeper purpose. So farewell, my learned Nipponese fellow, until we meet again. Alright, I think I'll end the episode here. Next time, I'll finish the game with all the post-trial stuff and edit in my final thoughts in the credits. Thanks for watching. See ya.